Hi, everybody. Jason here. Welcome to the Tablas Creek Instagram Live broadcast. So this week, I have a guest I'm super excited about. It's a friend, also a great mentor for somms around the country. This is Christie Dufault. She is on the faculty of the Culinary Institute of America in New York and was out here in California for more than a decade doing the same thing. So I am super excited to talk to her. But as I usually do, while we're waiting for people to join, I'm going to give you a few updates as to what we have going on here at the vineyard. So I'll share a few pictures. The big take-home message is that we are sort of right at the point where it's turning from winter to spring. And it depends where you look. Like you look along the rock walls, the California poppies are blooming. It feels like spring. You look into the vineyard, and depending on where you look, it might still look like winter. This is a Syrah block with the cover crop still up high, vines still fully dormant. That doesn't look really very different than it did a couple of months ago. But if you look deeper into the vineyard, you can see areas where we're starting to get things under control. So here's a vineyard block where we've started to turn the cover crop under, head trained, Grenache at the bottom of the hill and some Tannat. Looking over some Viognier. We are racing against bud break to get our sheep a last pass through some of the late sprouting vineyard blocks. So you can see them right here in a Mourvedre block from this morning. There's still lots of grass, and they've been through the vineyard blocks at least twice in every block, and most of the blocks 3 times. We are seeing bud break. So let me go through kind of variety by variety, and you'll see the diversity of where we are. So start with something like Mourvedre. So Mourvedre, you can see the bud just pushing there. It's still at the very early stages. Compare that to something like Grenache, which is like we got full leaves. Grenache is always early. We noticed bud break on Grenache the first 10 days ago. So that's Grenache. Let's look at Syrah. So Syrah, you can see we have more than buds, something less than leaves. Counoise is more or less where the Mourvedre is. So you can see, again, buds are just starting to push. And then the principal whites. We'll start with Viognier, which is the most advanced. You can see the long Viognier canes are all sprouted and getting going. Marsanne is not as far advanced. It's again, kind of buds are just budding out, but not very far. Grenache Blanc looks like Grenache. In fact, this is one of the seasons where you just can't tell them apart. So you can see Grenache is fully sprouted. And then finally, Mourvedre, which is always the last to sprout. It looks more or less, and really not just more or less, it looks like it did in January. So we're just trying to race bud break, get the sheep through one last time. Meanwhile, in the winery, we're working on blending. The whites from 2021, which is fun. Spent this morning working on trying to get the Esprit Blanc settled, and I'll have more about that on the blog coming up. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing. I am going to invite Christy to join me. There she is. Okay. Her Instagram name is no social media presence, which is amazing. So we are doing our best to prove that untrue today. So I sort of see you, Christy. I see the side of your ear.
Hi.
Hey, there you are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Hi, Jason.
How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It feels like spring out here in Paso Robles. We had our first 85-degree day of the year yesterday, and it feels like it's going to hit that today. And all the flowers are blooming, and we're waiting for the vines. You probably saw from the pictures I shared, the vines are starting to push. But it's spring. Feels like spring.
It's spectacular. It's California and spring. It only takes moving away to appreciate its glory. And I love that tour through the bud break. That is incredible. Um, that you showed us the differences in some of the varieties. That was fantastic. Thank you.
It's one of the times a year where I think it's very easy to see how different the vines are inherently. I mean, I think sometimes people think of harvest or bud break or veraison as a moment, and it's really not. It's a continuum depending on what part of the vineyard you're in, what grape variety you're looking at, what little microclimate or mesoclimate you're in. So I always try to show that to people because I think it helps them wrap their heads around some of the diversity of what's going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's beautiful. And the plants are, they're so beautiful, each and every one of them. It kind of reminds us like they're individuals, and I suppose they have their families, but they also have their individual personalities, and even showing the difference between the Viognier and the Grenache Blanc and the Mourvèdre. That was fantastic, how different they are.
Cool. Awesome. Happy you enjoyed it. So I gave people a very quick intro right at the beginning, and I'm not sure if you were on for that, but I would love you to tell a little bit about your story, how you got into wine. What was your pathway in? Was wine something that you knew you wanted to be a part of from relatively early age? Was wine on your table growing up with your family? What was your starting point?
Well, thanks for asking, Jason. I think wine was in my family. It was on the table normally, regularly, and a little bit of that French heritage, and parents who believed that there's no time like family time at the table, and so that was important. But in college, I studied art administration. I wanted to work in a museum, and I did in fact work in a museum or be a gallerist, and I loved the art world and still do. But I fell into wine. I fell into working in restaurants in college, and I got bit by that bug, and I love service, and I love wine, and I ended up studying in France. I was studying art, but I fell in love with wine, and one thing led to another. It's a very long story, but I'll keep it short. I think what happened was this: I saw sommeliers working in France, and I said to myself, that is a cool job. Walking around and talking to interesting people about food and wine sounds like a really cool job to me. So I endeavored to become a sommelier, and very happy that I did so.
And I think you were at Gary Denko when we first met, and I remember. I feel like you were one of the first kind of high-profile somms to recognize the potential for what Tablas Creek could be. Do you remember your first experience with Tablas?
Well, I love that question. Boy, do I. And I think well, first of all, that's you and I did meet at Gary Denko, but I met some other members of your family before that, Jason. And so, but I was first exposed to the estate when I was a sommelier in Phoenix. And I had a very good sales rep in Phoenix who said, there's this really exciting new property in Paso Robles. You want to learn about it. And she brought me some of the early releases of wines, and I was so excited by the project. And gosh, if I had been better prepared, I would have dug up those notebooks and found those notebooks from 20 years ago, and roughly. And anyway, I fell in love with the wines then, before I'd ever sort of in the early days, and I learned the story about your family and the Perrin family, and then I subsequently always found the wines to fit at the table of the restaurants where I worked, and from Phoenix to San Francisco and multiple restaurants in the Bay Area. And and then of course I just carried on. So when I arrived at Ghirardengo, I was already putting Tablas Creek on the wine list. That was a done deal. So this is and every year, I mean, that's the thing about your estate is there's so much to look forward to with new bottlings and new vintages and or little tweaks in the cuvées and characteristics of new vintages. So that's one of the many reasons that makes Tablas an exciting restaurant wine for sure.
Thanks. It's fun to hear you say that. I mean, I know one of the things that we always talk about when we're sitting around the blending table, and that's very top of mind because that's what we're working on this week, is that we want the wines to reflect what's great about that year in this place. So it's not supposed to be formulaic. It's not supposed to be a replica of what we've done either in terms of flavor or blend in a past year. It's supposed to be responsive to what the year is all about. And I think that may on one level make it a little harder if somebody expects it to always fit into a very specific box. But I think for the people who are really interested in what we're doing and why we're doing it, it's kind of a promise to them that they're going to get something which could only have been made in that year in this place and is going to change based on the changes in the raw materials that we see.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, it's always been a very ambitious project, and I know you've heard that before, but to me it represents the best of the best, right? Terroir and appellation and excellence in farming and sustainability practices and deliciousness at the table, to use my favorite technical term, is it delicious? And that's what also makes me a big fan and curious about Tablas Creek as well, is because you don't necessarily fit into a neat, tidy box. And so there's a lot of information and education around your ranch and around what you do and around your, the wines at the table. And you sort of have it all going on.
Yeah, we realized pretty early on that like we were making wines, blends, which didn't really have a category, from grapes that people didn't know and couldn't pronounce in a part of California they hadn't heard of, with French names that didn't mean anything to them. So we had like 4 strikes against us at the beginning. And if we weren't taking an active role in trying to like get people inside our heads, like get people to understand why we were doing things the way that we were doing them and why we had made the choices that we had made, like we thought it was going to be a really tough uphill battle. So, I mean, that's driven a lot of the choices that we've made in terms of like the writing that we do on the blog about the choices that we made, the sorts of events that we choose to participate in, the education focus we have for people who come to visit us at the winery. It's all trying to kind of get people inside these things that these discussions and challenges that we think are fascinating and that we feel like giving people some exposure to will help them understand and feel more excited about the end wines. So
yeah. Well, yes, everything you're saying makes perfect sense, including even the labels at Tablas Creek. I mean, there's so much information, and they're beautiful, but they also, when you have people in faraway places that have never been to California picking up a bottle of Tablas Creek, I mean, I can very much appreciate how much you and your team put into the labels, and everything else. But
I laugh because I think the first 5 years of my time out here were spent convincing my dad that we had to cut some text out of the labels because the font was too small for anyone to read. So this is something that we definitely inherited from the beginning. It was like, I don't know how you can fit 600 words on the back of one label panel, but I think my dad had tried to do it. So it's always been a question of like, how do you condense that information, distill it down to the things that are really important, and yet still give enough richness to help people find that finger hold into a wine that otherwise might seem like, what, 5 grapes and I don't know, 4 of them, and like, what? So
Yeah,
um, I'm happy you feel like we hit a happy medium in having content and still, well, it's still of a legible font size.
it is indeed. It is.
So you're a faculty member at the CIA in New York. Um, what was the transition like from being on the floor at restaurants to being a teacher?
Well, again, thank you for such a thoughtful question, and I'll answer it, but I hope I can pose a question to you too after. Um, well, it for me it was sort of normal and natural because one of the biggest parts of being a sommelier in fine dining is aiding guests, serving guests, and also working on a team and being and helping train people about wine. And I loved that part. I loved kind of the staff training element of being a wine director. I loved bringing the back of the house and the front of the house together and a little bit more of a teamwork relationship, teaching cooks about wine, teaching servers about food, and so that was great. I didn't set out to be a teacher. I mean, in my 20s and 30s on the floor of these restaurants, I did not know I would end up being a wine professor at the Culinary Institute of America. And I'm very grateful it worked out this way. As I like to tell my students, opportunities present themselves. But teaching felt good, felt natural. I had the amazing opportunity when living in San Francisco to go up to the Napa Valley and teach some workshops at Greystone, our historic and beautiful CIA campus in St. Helena. And one of my own teachers invited me up there, Karen McNeil, and so that was the start of something wonderful. I was sort of teaching as a visiting instructor, and that increased. And then in 2010, I became a full-time teacher because we launched more substantial wine programming at the Culinary Institute, and more concentrations in beverage, and then ultimately a master's degree that we have ongoing now. That's very exciting. And so I was 11 years full-time at the CIA in St. Helena, and it was really only last fall that my small family and I moved to the Hudson Valley, where I'm a teacher at the mothership campus, right? Our Hudson Valley campus, which is beautiful in its own way. It doesn't quite feel like bud break around here yet, but
March is a tease in the Northeast. Like,
right,
the days get longer, the sun gets warmer, and then you get whomped with a snowstorm. Like, it's
right,
it's not spring yet.
right. It's not. So that's why I'm looking at your weather with in your backdrop with envy. But it's great, and I love wine education at so many levels, and it's such a, people that love food and love beverage, they want to learn, but some people want to learn a lot and some people want to learn another level. And so there's always there's a lot of diversity in there, and it's always an exciting approach to subject of learning. So my question for you, Jason, if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, is it is related to the question you asked me, because I was thinking, we now, especially now that we are graduating, we're over 200 graduates of our master's program. I'm, as you said earlier, no social media. I can barely understand what I'm doing here. I can't read the font without my glasses. I don't know I was afraid I couldn't even turn it on, so I'm glad it worked. But I know that some grads and students may very well be on with us, and it's just so redeeming and rewarding and wonderful to see what they're all up to and what they're doing, the graduates and enrolled students. But my question for you, because I've found that this is happening increasingly. We have these incredibly bright people that arrive, and they're enamored with the culinary world and the food and wine world, and perhaps wine in particular. And a lot of them with undergraduate degrees in things like hospitality management or marketing or communications or business. And so they start their kind of deep dive into wine learning and wine theory and wine tasting and learning, about from the ground up, the global world of wine. And as you know, there's so many appellations, but so many students will say, gosh, I love it all. And I love this kind of business side. I love sales. I love marketing, communications. I love the theory part, the intellectual part, the journalism part, writing about wine, critiquing wines, tasting wines. Others say, well, I'm so interested in production, winemaking, or, it's almost like these different silos of career paths they could consider. And I was thinking about you and your sort of background, like you'd be a good person to kind of whittle away at that question, because what do you tell a person in their early 20s who's very, very keen about wine? Like, how do they choose between working at a winery and production, or viticulture or viniculture or sales and marketing? I don't know.
I think the only
Sorry.
way to answer the question is just to tell people not to stress about it, to get started somewhere, and they'll find their way. I mean, that's the thing about working in wine, is that you meet lots of other people who work in wine, and it's not like just because you work production, you only meet other winemakers, or just because you decide to take a job with a distributor as a sales rep, like all you meet is other distributor sales reps. You don't. There's a lot of kind of overlap and interweaving that happens. And I think it's so hard to know before you've dived into it where you're going to end up finding your best fit. But I think stressing over feeling like you have to find that best fit on your first try is unnecessary, because there are all of these different people who you will meet, whatever your starting point is, who you'll meet that will take you to whatever the next step is in that journey. And I know, like, if you look at our own team here at Tablas, I mean, we have half of our cellar team started in our tasting room at one point or another. We had our national sales manager who then moved on to now work for Vineyard Brands. He also started in our tasting room. We've got people who've moved around from sales to wine club to marketing that's just us. I mean, and of course you have the whole world of other businesses that you get to deal with as an estate winery. So I think that's it. Don't stress. Get started someplace. Get a toehold in an organization that you like and is committed to your growth, or committed to exposing you to opportunities, and the rest will work itself out.
That's such great advice. Yeah, you're right. I agree. Don't stress out, and just go visit, go make visits. So many of our students and grads have visited Tablas Creek, and the reports back are amazing. Like, your hospitality there and team, everyone, the reports are tremendous every time.
I'm super proud of the team that we have, and we're fortunate to be working on a project that's an inspiring thing for a lot of us to work on, from the farming pieces to the pioneering of new grape varieties to the education piece that we do. I mean, there's lots to get excited about.
For sure.
So I did want to ask you I mentioned at the beginning that you are co-author with your husband of a cookbook. Um, what can you tell people a little bit about that and talk about what the process was like of writing a book together?
Wow, I did not expect that question, Jason. Um, well, thank you so much. The book is called Two in the Kitchen, and still out there. It's I loved the book and the process. Now, you you have to understand that my co-author has written 5 books, maybe 6. So I'm not sure he was as pleased with his co-author as I was as pleased with my co-author.
You're
Um,
probably selling yourself short, but anyway, go ahead.
well, it was a really fun process, and we are grateful. We worked with William Sonoma on it, and there's 10 other couples in the book, sort of about like learn, it's called Two in the Kitchen, like how to be with your partner in the kitchen kind of thing. And
Like, I think this isn't the subtitle like a cookbook for newlyweds or something like that.
it is that's the William Sonoma kind of, that's the like spring season to sell the book, right? Like cookbook for newlyweds. But don't worry, you can use it if you're not getting married also. And there's a lot of fun things in there. I mean, we talk about the most, our list of essential kitchen items are, which we really need. Having just moved, we know especially what we need. Our dance parties after cooking and cleaning, that kind of thing. And a lot of really terrific recipes. There's no doubt about that, because we both love food and we love to cook. And we had a fun time making the book. We did. And we're pleased with it. It turned out well. And I'm not sure that Jordan McKay will ever ask me to write a book with him again. That's okay, but he's busy with his other books. But we enjoyed it, and I used to joke that I'm sure that the first run of print were all bought by my mother, his mother, or our aunts all combined. For sure, as they were going to bridal showers and weddings, that was their go-to gift. But I'm proud of the book, and it turned out really well. So there's some, as I said, terrific recipes in there.
Awesome. So I talked to Jordan. He was my guest on one of these conversations last summer sometime. And you were getting ready to move from the Bay Area to the Hudson Valley. And he was talking about some of the things that he was really excited about, getting closer to all of the kind of cheese and cider and kind of that kind of artisan food and beverage piece that happens in the Northeast. And you're also close to the Finger Lakes. I think people in California are so focused on California. I'm curious to know if there are things about being in New York that were like surprising or really like unexpected, or things that you were looking forward to and have been every bit as exciting as you thought they would be.
Yeah, well, gosh, I mean, first of all, our move was very bittersweet. I mean, we did not leave California because we don't love California, and we lived there 25 years, and friends and our crew and our the whole California wine industry. And the only reason we left is because we know we can visit anytime we want. But coming to New England, coming to the East, I have to be careful with New York. The Hudson Valley is technically not New England, but my
very
family,
important to New Yorkers and New Englanders.
correct.
Not so much to Californians, but anyway,
Right,
go ahead.
right. But my family's in New England, so but it's been great. We really are beginning to feel the 4 seasons and embrace them, because they are really strikingly different than in California.
Yeah.
And so I would say that that's one. I mean, we knew there was going to be 4 seasons, but it is strikingly different. And, you know, it's true, March is the mud season, and spring is a tease. It is not bud break here. But I will say it is phenomenally beautiful. The Hudson River Valley region is strikingly beautiful. I call it the mighty river. There's so many farms. It's you can't even imagine. And it's small farm after small farm after small farm, and they all have these, you know, signs that say welcome, and there you can just, from the farmers markets to visiting the farms proper, it's incredible. And yes, the dairies, the I say cheeseries, you know, the wineries, the cideries, the breweries, the distilleries, right? New York State has made a very business friendly environment for all kind of categories of production in beverage. And the last thing I'll say about an unexpected thing was that the radio, you know, when you get really tired of listening to because you have to drive a lot here too. Everyone says California's so big. Well, here you have to drive a lot. And so when you're listening to the news, a podcast, okay, but when you need a little change and you're flipping the dial, I can't believe how much like 80s music they play on the radio here. It's like it is full on REO Speedwagon and Journey and Styx, and I mean the Eagles. It is all the time. I mean 70s, 80s, on and on. Fleetwood Mac. It's like flashback all the time, and it's hilarious. But they do not do that in California. California's like, I mean, maybe there's an 80s station, but California's like alternative. You know, it's like Seattle and Portland and LA.
Classic rock all the way in the mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So I have one more real question, and then a quick little follow-up, because we're half an hour into this already, which I do try to keep these to half an hour. So the real question is, are there like wine regions or wine trends that you think are like really interesting and exciting, maybe a little under the radar for people that they should pay attention to, but maybe aren't?
Oh gosh, I should have been prepared for that one. Right, because I can't say all the things that have already been happening. I mean, rosé.
Well, I mean, there's all levels of discovery. Yeah. I mean, if there's things that you think are excited about, I mean, there's I mean, just because they have made it to the classrooms at the CIA does not mean that they have made it out into general circulation. So interpret it however broadly you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so sure, things like, you know, rosé is here to stay. Pet nat is around. You know, other styles of fizzy or sparkling wine, exciting. Lower alcohol wines, sure. I mean, I feel like those are some of the things that have been trending for a while now. I think, you know, I'm happy to say people are getting a little bit more open or inviting about blends, not necessarily having to know or to nail it, right? Oh, I tasted the 7% Counoise in that, right? Seriously? So I think people are like, okay, is this a delicious wine? Not necessarily having to dissect the blend always. Although, of course, there's merit in learning and understanding why the winemakers made that blend. And then the other thing that I think is happening and is exciting for me and to my palate is this, you know, a little bit of a embracing of not only lower alcohol, but also kind of some of the, I need to be careful how I word this. I don't want to say neutral white wines. I don't want to say that. I want to say more sort of these delicious, you know, quaffing wine. You know, the French call them the glue wines. They're just easy drinking, approachable, and maybe we call them quaffing wines, but not just kind of the ease and approachability, but even sort of the varieties, right? Like there's more bottlings. I don't know if you're doing solo peak pool or not. Like I know you have it on the property, right? You have peak
Yeah,
pool.
we not quite every year. There's some years where it's so valuable in the blends that all gets snapped up, but
Right.
it's one of our favorites when we can bottle it on its own.
Right. Yeah, I remember now. So, I'm not suggesting that peak pool is necessarily like the greatest white grape in the world and, going to, rock it for everyone. But to me, that's kind of neat, right? Like learning about a grape like that or trying it and sort of its fresh and
Yep.
innocent versions, bright and again a grape that's so a style I should say that's so suitable for the table and so suitable for sharing. And I'm sure yours is under screw cap, bring it on the picnic,
Yep.
so easy to share, so easy to turn people onto it. And so I think I'm so excited for that. I think that we don't have to necessarily impress everyone with the finest wines in the wine cellar. I think bringing delicious wine around for lunch and brunch and an afternoon snack and dinner is a good idea. So that's what I'm happy to see. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. I think, you don't always want a classic novel to read, and the same way that you don't always want, I don't think, a wine that requires your undivided attention when you drink. There's times where you want something that is just a cheerful companion.
Yeah. Yeah. And at Tablas, you've all been doing this so long anyway. I got my Patelin right here. But that's the USA has not been doing that long.
Right.
The consuming world has not. Of course, the Italians with all their random whites and the French with their vin de whatever France, that's fine.
Right.
But people, I think American consumers are catching on, and that's kind of exciting.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something. I remember talking to Jordan about this, I think for an article that he wrote at one point, where it seems like for a long time, even inexpensive American wines were sort of like pale copies of expensive wines, not these kind of like celebrating their simplicity. So I hope that we see more of that in California.
Yeah.
I think we are, and I think definitely it's one of the things that the wine world in general is more open to than I can ever remember it being.
Yes, I agree, and that's fantastic. There will always be space for our single vineyards and the best vintages of Esprit and all of that, but and we'll always I hope savor them and appreciate them. But there is nothing wrong with sitting around the lunch table with your friend and having that little quaffing wine or
I'm gonna go get myself a glass of our Vermentino right after this, just for exactly that reason.
Exactly what I mean, right? Yes, the Vermentino, delicious, lip smacking good.
Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Christie. It was a pleasure to see you, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining me. I hope that our paths will cross on the East Coast when we're back there this summer. And meanwhile, I hope that spring comes for you sooner than later, and bud break is not as far away as it might feel.
Thank you, Jason, and it's been an honor to join you for this time. I'm so grateful, and please express my gratitude to everyone at the winery and the estate, and I look forward to visiting again someday, sooner than later. So thanks again.
Excellent. Thank you for joining me. And Tablas Creek people, I will be back again in 2 weeks. My guest in 2 weeks will be Carol Meredith, the great winemaker and professor, famous for researching the origin of Syrah back in the day. So anyway, Carol will be joining me from her winery in a couple of weeks. Until then, I hope you are all well. I hope you are seeing bud break wherever you are. Christie Dufault, thank you for joining me, and see you all in a couple of weeks.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again.
Bye.